I'm interested in trying a social experiment. Let's assume that from here on out, from this day forward, no matter what happens, if a black person is being convicted of any crime, he is going to be found innocent, no matter what.
Ha ha, very funny, mother.
It is almost impossible for us to convict an officer for committing a crime, and the reason we can't convict these officers isn't because they are untouchable, but the system is systematically designed to protect them. The most recent example we can find for injustice in our justice system is the Stockley individual. Shot a black male who was being pursued. Things escalated, but the telltale sign of this crime is this scumbag of an officer planted a weapon on the individual because he innately knew that he was guilty of a crime, which was excessive force and police brutality. But you'll find a pattern with a lot of officers that shoot unarmed black men, and no, it isn't that they're all white, even though a vast majority of them are. In fact, 70% of the officers who shoot unarmed black men are white. But there's a reason why these officers aren't being convicted of the crimes they're being accused of. And it's not necessarily because the justice system is working against them. It's probably because it has something to do with the fact that we're not properly labeling their crimes. So for us to better understand what their crime is, let's first understand how they're being charged. Majority of the officers that we can think of have been charged with first-degree murder. But by definition, first-degree murder requires a person to methodically plan out, anticipate, lay in wait to ambush said suspect. In every situation, in almost every scenario, there's no way that you can tell me the officer who shot Tamir Rice laid in wait and purposely had it out to get Tamir Rice. Tamir Rice never knew this scumbag of an officer. Same thing with Eric Gardner. He never knew the scumbag officer that choked him out. So they couldn't have been premeditated murder. So in essence, when we get to court, it's not an argument if the officer meant to kill the victim. It's an argument that the officer intended to kill or cause harm to that individual before he even met him. In other words, we have to prove that someone is racist without any prior knowledge of their background or history. In some rare occasions, we are able to specifically point out situations where officers have made brash decisions. But once again, those decisions were made with someone else's life on the line. So maybe second-degree murder is a little bit easier. This basically says that the murderer didn't care about the person's life. So he didn't necessarily intend to kill this person, but he wasn't actively trying to save said person's life. And then the lowest version of this is basically voluntary manslaughter, which is basically a crime of passion. Say, for example, what most officers traditionally go through, which is a situation where heightened emotions cause you to act out of norm, which is basically the whole term "I feared for my life." And the structure of most of these crimes and most of these trials usually fall into this pattern. The vast majority of things that you can be sent to prison for as an officer include stealing drugs from the state, IRS, murdering a civilian, and rape. But in no particular order, do you know which one of these numbers actually go with these numbers? 23%, 46%, 18%, and 13%. You guessed it, you're a lot more likely to go to jail if you're an officer, regardless of your race, color, or belief, if you rape someone versus killing somebody. And in the vast majority of these rape cases, we found that the individual was usually bound, female, and underage. These are some of the most atrocious individuals being given badges, weapons, and most importantly of all, the benefit of the doubt when they don't deserve it. But these numbers just don't tell the story of the injustice that are going on in our system. It also tells a story that is proactively going on. If an officer is to go to jail 13% of the time for killing an individual, the chances of them going to jail for killing a black individual out of the 13% is 6%. Strikingly, when the officer is found guilty of a crime, 80% of the time the officer is a minority. And to further stress this, if an officer is found guilty and they're not black, they only have a 32% chance of actually ever seeing any jail time, as given with these two lovely individuals. As Michael Slager on camera shot a black, watch the video. has gotten off with a mistrial and pled guilty to lesser charges, and he'll never see the inside of a jail for doing this. Remember Laquan McDowell, who pulled a knife out and walked away from an officer who was approaching him? He got shot, I lost count. And this officer never saw the inside of a jail cell either. In fact, he's a janitor. Even with the crimes he's committed, somebody would still hire him. And that speaks volumes for our justice system, because it says to any individual who's an officer, if you're white, it's all right. And this shouldn't strike you as odd. And since 2005 to 2017, only 3 white officers have ever gone to jail and served prison time for killing a black person. Mind you, we are 6 times more likely to be shot by an officer when approached. That's basically saying less than 1% of officers who have shot black people go to jail. And that's maddening. But this might not just be a black or white issue, because in 2015, officers shot 1,146 individuals. 800 of those individuals were unarmed, and 0 people were convicted of any wrongdoing in that year. And this was right around the time where these individuals were being shot. Unarmed individuals being killed in our country cannot go unpunished. Basic humanity or limited understanding of the value of a human life cannot be roaming our streets with weapons of mass destruction. Officers just aren't good at saying freeze anymore. Put your hands up. This is something that I used to see in movies and think, wow, that's really cliche and corny to say right before you draw your weapon. But in today's society, that cliche might really be needed, because Officer Gunho over here pulled out his service weapon and fired at an individual who looked like he was committing a crime. This idiot found his way onto a movie set where they were filming a fake robbery. And to add insult to injury, what if that person had taken down the suspect and actually was trying to restore order to the scene? This officer would have killed the hero in the situation, but we don't have to pretend, because it's actually happened. Here's an undercover officer who was shot by another officer in the same department who is his best friend and was at that person's birthday party last year. He didn't even recognize him, and he stood right in front of him. All it took was this officer to say gun, and he unloaded into his best friend who is an officer. That same police department ended up wasting $6.5 million paying for legal, medical, and restitution for damages that this person received as it ended his career. So with all this basic information, since 2005, no judge by himself has ever convicted an officer of murder. If he has had ability to convict individual, he has always convicted them to a lesser crime that would require them never to see the inside of a cell. While of the 29 individuals since 2005 who have gone before a jury, only 15 of them actually were convicted of a crime, but 100% of them received a lesser punishment by the judge, which resulted in some of them not even seeing prison, some of them not even serving their full sentence, or some of them getting out on good behavior prior to the end of their sentence. But you have to remember, there's a mandatory minimum for individuals who get caught with 2 ounces of weed on them. It goes without saying our justice system is broken, but how can we actively fix it? A vast majority of us don't understand how to get into the legal system and actually make a difference. So here's my proposal. Anytime you get summoned for jury duty and you're a black person, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to your community to go out and be the best juror you can be. And in order for you to be the best juror you can be, you proactively have to help fix the system in the long run. So I suggest in this social experiment that I've created, from now on, if you ever get called to be a juror and the suspect is black, automatically not guilty. It is for absolutely everything and anything you could think of, from murder, rape, fraud, drugs, IRS, anything and everything. They are innocent. And the only reason isn't because they're black. It's because we know for a fact that 63% of them might be innocent. As we found out in 2014 with the Innocence Project, that 15% of the people on death row in Texas were actually innocent of the crime that they were being accused of. And to top it all off, 4 of them found out they were innocent after they've been executed. So if you ever get called for jury duty and you're black, or you just want to be part of the movement, if they're black, they're innocent. And if they're white, flip a coin, see what happens. But because even if they are found guilty, this is statistically proven, it will be given 1/3 of the punishment that a normal black person would be given. So here's some advice. So we owe it to our justice system and our ability to grow and progress to find a new method how to deal with our criminal justice system and how to properly delegate punishment accordingly. Seeing as the world we live in no longer abides by the rules that we've made for it, we as a group of black individuals have to do our best to stay ahead of the curve. And part of us staying ahead of the curve is basically making sure that we stay alive.